Going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Results Show, where we are interviewing real practitioners who have real results for themselves and their clients. My name is Evan Transu, aka Health Coach Ev. I'm your host, and we are with Real Results superstar, multi-time guest, one of the most viewed guests of all time on the Real Results Show, Ryan Monahan. Ryan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks, Evan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Ryan and I have done quite a few interviews together. We've had him on the FDN Thrive podcast, so you guys can always check that out. I've thrown that around a few times on here, but that's basically a way that you can hear very similar practitioners, sometimes the same practitioners, to the ones that hop on this show, but you get a much more in-depth story from them and even more golden nuggets. So that's the FDN Thrive podcast. But for today, we are talking all about Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And Ryan's talked about this before, but this is something that Ryan could probably lecture on for 12 hours a day, over a long weekend, maybe like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type of thing at this point. So I'm sure we'll talk about some things that you guys have never heard before, even if you've seen him as a guest on the Real Results Show. First and foremost, Ryan, because there's going to be plenty of listeners that, haven't heard anything that you've had to say before. Can you give us a little bit of a background, just a summary of your health story, especially the TSH and the Hashimoto's part, and then eventually how you found FDN and just functional medicine in general?
Well, great. I'd be happy to do that. Like you said, Evan, on that FDN Thrive podcast, if anyone wants to go and take a listen to that, I highly recommend that because you and I go a lot deeper in that format in a longer, 90-minute podcast. But to summarize briefly, what I can say is that for more than a decade, I was suffering from chronic fatigue, depression, debilitating allergies, and all kinds of other mystery symptoms where I had no idea what the true root cause was or what was actually going on. And during that time period, it started around 18 years old or so is when it started to reach kind of a peak. And it was a steady downward decline from there over the years throughout my college days. It reached such a point where I was setting 2 or 3 alarms to wake myself up in the morning, which I thought was kind of normal. Maybe I was just kind of burning the candle at both ends from working, having a full course load, just kind of balancing a lot of things, thinking I was Superman, that I could do it all. But ultimately, through that period, throughout my entire 20s, I had visited over 40 doctors across several different states, actually, different specialists and general practitioners. I mean, I saw a rheumatologist, I saw a dermatologist, ear, nose, and throat doctors, all kinds of different specialists, without really finding any answers. And that was over more than a 10-year period, still not uncovering any answers to my health complications. Meanwhile, things were continuing to progressively get worse and worse and worse. So ultimately, I was able to find a doctor that was a little bit wiser, perhaps, or was able to look at things from a different perspective. And he was licensed in both traditional medicine and traditional Chinese medicine. And he was the first person that had ever run a thyroid panel for me. And he ran also, not only that, but he ran a full thyroid panel, which is also very rare for any doctor to do that, by the way. So I'm talking TSH, free T3, free T4, thyroid antibodies, etc. And what we found out was that I was living with Hashimoto's disease, which at the time I had only just heard for the first time when he called me up and told me what the deal was. But not only that, my thyroid antibodies were extremely high, but my TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, was above 150, which to this day, actually, Evan, I think only you have found a client that exceeded my, not that it's a competition, but a TSH of 150 is through the roof, astronomically high. To give you guys a reference, just in case you're not familiar, an optimal TSH range is about a 0.5 to a 2.0. You'll see some variations on that, but usually somewhere in that ballpark. And the higher above a 2.0 or a 2.5, the more sluggish or slow your thyroid will be functioning. And as a result, Evan.
I'm sorry, I got to throw in one thing there because I think it's important to recognize this. The ranges that you just talked about too are functional, which, hey, we know are a little stricter. But guys, even Western medicine standards are rarely above a 4 to 4.5, Ryan. So even a 5.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're way out of the ballpark on anyone's standard.
Oh, even from conventional standards, at least if you're going by a 5.0 from a conventional perspective, I mean, what's the math on that? Let's see, 30 times higher, right?
Yes.
So the doctor had actually, his words, I'm kind of paraphrasing here. He said something to the effect of, "I can't believe you've even been able to get out of bed in the morning." And that's very much how I felt for many, many years. And it was a struggle to figure this out. And it was unfortunate that it took so long, but at the same time, I was extremely grateful to find an answer because it changed my life. And that was sort of the first seed or first piece of information I received that ultimately led me down this route of functional health and functional diet and lifestyle.
This is so awesome, man. And obviously on the Real Results Show, we are talking about people who get results like this all the time because you clearly turned that around. And many of our listeners that have seen you before already know this. But if you're just seeing Ryan for the first time, you're about to find out how he did that and how possibly you could do that too if this is something that you're dealing with. But every Wednesday on the Real Results Show, we're always giving away freebies. So this week, you can drop the word results in the comments and we'll get you hooked up with the FDN Thrive Survey. Now, what that is a special survey that we've designed to help you find hidden healing opportunities within your own body, just using survey questions and finding patterns of things that as a lay person, you might not have ever realized, but we found through working with thousands of people over a decade now. FDN's been around. So if you want something like that, completely free, drop the word results in the comments below. And for those just tuning in, we're interviewing Ryan Monahan today, talking all about Hashimoto's and how he was able to overcome this very debilitating thing naturally. And, for some people, it is a mild thing. For many, it's really serious. And your doctor nailed it. The fact that you were able to get out of bed is pretty remarkable. And you said that I had a client actually personally who exceeded that 150. And yeah, she was at a 211. She shares this publicly. So I'm always happy to talk about it. And that was something where I actually posed that same question or thought to her that your doctor posed, because I remembered you saying that. And she's like, you know what? I don't really know how I'm getting out of bed, but I got a kid and I'm just motivated to do that. And I do whatever I can for him. And we all know the power of moms, right? Like how many moms are involved with FDN or either Thrive or the coaching side of things. I mean, it seems like we're dominated with women who have children because they are so dedicated to helping out their families, which is a wonderful thing. So yeah, she was able to keep pushing through that, but no one should have to do that, right, Ryan? Like it shouldn't take over 40 doctors. And that's kind of generous if you count the, what is it called again? A grand rounds trial? I still had never heard that until you brought that up.
That's right. A grand rounds is essentially where you have dozens of different doctors or medical students examining you. So I remember this crystal clear, this moment where I was sort of recommended for or referred out to a grand rounds at Yale New Haven Hospital. And I was sitting in a room with pretty much nothing in it. It was just kind of an empty room and a chair. And one doctor would come in one at a time with a clipboard and ask me what my symptoms were and try to piece together what I was going through and maybe come up with at least a hypothesis of what was going on. And so there was about 40 different doctors that came in that day. And they had provided me at the end of the day with essentially like a 2-page summary of what they thought would be their findings, right? Their report of findings. And in so many words, it basically said, we have no idea. I mean, I have it to this day. I have a copy of the report, and it said something to the effect that Ryan appears to be in good health. He commented something like, he said he generally feels good on a gluten-free diet. And so we recommend he stays on that diet. Right. And like, there was not a single.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
It's just unbelievable. So yeah, not one of them had suggested a thyroid issue or even any potential route of further investigation of, hey, like maybe a hormone panel would be a good idea. Maybe looking at A, B, or C. So I was still, even at that point, after that grand rounds, it was still another 5 years or so or more, but before I was still yet to be diagnosed with Hashimoto's.
Wow. And so, yeah, technically way more than 40 doctors if we're actually counting each and every individual one.
Maybe closer to 50 or more.
Yeah, and Ryan, I heard a great, I got reminded of a great quote recently, and it was a guy, Dr. Charles Burwell. He used to be dean for 15 years at Harvard Medical School. And you know what? Because we stress this all the time, and anyone that knows us personally or knows FDN knows this, but just in case it's your first time tuning in, we are absolutely not like against or attacking Western medicine. We have MDs all over the place in FDN, right? We have PhDs, like people from very conventional backgrounds are here. We're just combining both philosophies, and we need both sides to understand what their limits are, because just like we don't want FDNs running around, and thankfully we've been able to really not have much of this, but running around playing doctor, right? That's unethical and illegal. We need doctors to be honest about when they don't understand certain things. And yeah, just saying, oh, well, gluten-free diet seems to work, keep doing that. That's unbelievable. And I'll finish up here. That comment or quote that I got reminded of, Dr. Burwell was addressing the new graduates of the medical school. And he said on the record, half of what we taught you is wrong. Unfortunately, we don't know what half. And that is not to discredit Western medicine. Obviously, Western medicine does miraculous things on, every minute probably, right? But the thing is, it seems that a lot of people that come out of that system, and perhaps this is just a problem with people in general, they forget these types of things. And there's an arrogance. Oh, if I can't figure it out with my labs, you must be crazy or it's in your head. How often do we hear that with clients and stuff, right? I mean, that's unfair to the people that have dealt with this stuff, and it's certainly unfair to you. So I'm glad that you came out on the other end. Before I get into the next question, I'm sure I feel like you have a comment for what I just said, perhaps.
There was a lot of gold there, Evan, but I totally agree with you. I say this all the time to my clients. If I break my arm, don't take me to the herbalist.
Yeah.
Take me to the emergency room. And yeah, Western conventional medicine, it excels at emergency care, right? But I think where we can really bridge this gap with this functional approach is looking at this diagnostic perspective of hidden stressors in the body, which is frankly often overlooked by conventional medicine. So things like hormone imbalances, nutrient deficiencies, gut health, toxins in the body, right? These are some areas that we potentially look to investigate in order to understand the why of what's going on. Now, another thing I'd like to add to that too was when I was first diagnosed with Hashimoto's, immediately I was put on Synthroid, which is a synthetic form of thyroid hormone. It's a conventional medication, but it changed my life. And thank God for that. And that was there because not only did that help give me my spark back and help me feel normal again, it gave me the energy to then be able to investigate the root causes, right? And to look further, right? So I absolutely use the best of both worlds and able to be where I am here today.
So well said, and I love the objectivity, right? Bringing in both sides, because yeah, how the heck are you supposed to heal if you can't even get out of bed? This takes work. Right. This isn't a joke. Anyone that goes through FDN, whether it's the course itself or the Thrive program, we are not kidding when we're talking on the phone to you and saying, hey, this is going to require change. Like, you're going to have to do some stuff. And that's okay, because it's absolutely worth it. And it's just as much of a personal growth journey sometimes as it is a health journey, which is an awesome thing. And for those that are just tuning in, we're always giving away freebies on the Real Results Show. So today you can drop the word results below in the comments. Even if you're catching the replay, we'll still get to you. And we'll send you over our FDN Thrive Survey. It is just a custom way that you can find hidden healing opportunities within your own body that no one else may have ever found for you before. Completely free. We'll send that over. Just drop results in the comments below. And we're talking to, wrong caption, Ryan Monahan today, all about Hashimoto's. So just for the sake of time today, because I know you and I could go forever, let's skip ahead a little bit. You got the diagnosis. You've been messing around with the natural side of things for a while, let's say, and you're finally getting some solid results. What, Ryan, were maybe the top 2 or 3 things that were essential for you getting to where you are today? Because if I'm not mistaken, you actually still do use a low dose of Synthroid, and that's getting better over the years, and possibly you might not even need that one day, which would be wonderful. But you're a rock star now. I mean, you're living a normal life, correct? Like, you're able to work, get all this stuff done. You got a thriving practice. So what were the biggest 2 or 3 things that led to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would actually start with some resources. So one of the first thing I came across was actually Isabella Wentz's book on thyroid health. It's called Hashimoto's Thyroiditis, Interventions for Finding the Root Cause. I might have that slightly wrong, but some variation on that. And that was my very first introduction to this concept that if the thyroid is dysfunctional, that it is the result of deeper dysfunction in the body. It was actually only a starting place when I figured out I had a thyroid issue. And it wasn't until uncovering her work that I realized that thyroid dysfunction can be implicated in gut infections, nutrient deficiencies, HPA axis dysregulation, right? Stress on the body, toxins, all kinds of different variables. So where I've come to now in my practice and working with clients dealing with autoimmune conditions is this understanding that if you're dealing with an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's, or maybe it's lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, whatever it might be, that these autoimmune conditions are the result of years of dysfunction or inflammation in the body. I call it like a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Because it's never just one single variable that's contributing to dysfunction. It's a multitude of different factors. And that's also one of the reasons why we use a comprehensive diet and lifestyle plan, and why we also don't run just one lab test. It's why we leave no stone unturned. As good FDNs, that's what we do. We look at all these different pictures and variables, right? So education, right? I think that's number one for me, just becoming aware of the problem, what we can do about it. And that helps us to create a roadmap and better understand our physiology and exactly what's going on. Know thyself, right? So that's huge, I think, for me. And I'm a big resource guy. I'm always sharing links, articles, podcasts, books, all that stuff with my clients. Another one would be implementing the autoimmune protocol diet. That was really instrumental in the process. And just to kind of briefly explain what that means is essentially it's a kind of elimination diet where you're removing more commonly inflammatory foods in the diet. At the same time, you're introducing foods that promote healing, like fermented foods, bone broth, organ meats, right? And these are frankly not foods that are very much often a part of a standard American diet. But once I started introducing these very supportive gut healing foods, it was like a light bulb came back on in my brain in terms of my energy, my sleep quality, my libido, my brain and cognitive function. That was really, really instrumental. And then I would say the third one, this is very broad, but the functional lab tests. I mean, I really credit my whole life to FDN in that process, because it helped me uncover some of the actual contributors to the thyroid dysfunction, like I had mentioned. And so in the process of my own journey, I had discovered that I had a parasite, H. pylori, candida. I was also dealing with a lot of mold-related complications, which is something that I didn't really uncover until a bit later. But basically, my health, metabolically speaking, underneath the hood, was kind of a mess, and I had a lot of work to do. And the thyroid, again, was just kind of the starting place. I often refer to thyroid dysfunction as sort of like the canary in the coal mine, right? So if the canary were to flop over and die in a coal mine, you wouldn't blame the canary. You would assume there's some kind of noxious gas in the cave, like some radon or some uranium or something, right? That's causing the bird to die. So that's like this common analogy that I use about the canary in the coal mine.
Sorry, my mute button didn't work for a second there. I had to click it manually. But I love those 3 tips, especially number 1 with education, because regardless of whether or not you want to be a practitioner or just a client of someone like yourself or the Thrive program, you are going to have to put some effort into learning. We have been taught so many incorrect things, probably unintentionally, right? I'm not someone that usually goes to the worst case scenario. I think this was a lot of really just misinformed and unintentional bad information getting spread. I think that was the case. And so we have to unlearn and then relearn some things. You're really not going to get to the next step without learning. And that's why our programs and the things that we offer clients are so comprehensive. They have to be. They have to be. We cannot just meet with you for 20 minutes and say, oh, here you go. If you think you're going to take care of something like what Ryan has dealt with in 20 minutes, that's ridiculous.
No way.
And it's insulting to the people who have dealt with it, quite frankly, because, I'm sure they've tried many things and, they didn't just miss a 20-minute session. There's a lot of things that they've been misinformed about over the years. So, what's so cool about you is you had I don't want to say no interest, but like you weren't in the health space at all before learning about these things, right? And like this is what inspired you, your own healing journey to become an FDN practitioner, correct?
I had always had a kind of peripheral interest in health. And in my 20s, I had experimented with different diets. I had tried a specific carbohydrate diet. I had tried a vegetarian diet. I was a vegan yogi for a while, which the yoga part worked out well for me, but not so much the vegan part.
Yep.
But so, yeah, I always had an interest of it kind of on the sidelines. But no, at that time, and during that process I had described to you, where I was suffering from fatigue and depression and all these other symptoms, I was actually a touring musician. And so that willpower, right, even with having this undiagnosed Hashimoto's issue, was really to get out to band rehearsals and to shows and get out on the road and play, because I was very passionate about that, about living that life. And had I not been doing something that was meaningful to me, I mean, I don't think I would have had the willpower to get up and do what I was doing every day. Yeah. So no, right. I mean, I started from not even knowing what the thyroid was and what its role was, functionally speaking, in the body, to now being a functional practitioner with a thriving practice. So my life looks radically different than it did 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. And add to that you were, I mean, FDN is an advanced group, man. I'll put us up there. You know, I have no problem. There's a shameless plug, but you are literally one of the advisors within the FDN group. You know, you're a mentor and helping people out. I think that's awesome. You know, so it's not only did you go from this originally just trying to get your own health under control, but have excelled in it so much that you're now helping the practitioners, let alone the clients. That's an amazing thing. And so for the last several minutes here, one of the things I always like to feature on this show that maybe in all your times of being on here, you actually haven't gotten to talk about before. And that's like a really big client success, something that sticks out in your head. So perhaps their information is private. So to the degree that you're able, is there like a client success story that really sticks out in your head, specifically someone dealing with like Hashimoto's?
I definitely have one just very recently. Just finished up working through a 6-month package program with a client with Hashimoto's, with a Hashimoto's diagnosis. And, you know, her antibodies were moderately elevated in the 200 or 300 range, you know, definitely would be considered an autoimmune process where the immune system was attacking the thyroid gland, right? So she was dealing with a lot of those common associated symptoms of, you know, fatigue, brain fog, depression, constipation, I believe, you know, some of those ones you see commonly with thyroid issues. So long story short, we ran the FDN process. We followed the template, which is that, you know, those foundations of diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. We ran the foundational labs, put together a solid protocol for her. And Evan, I'm sure you do the same. Throughout the process of working with a client together, I do a lot of symptom tracking, where a client can track their subjective symptom scores, you know, by, you know, indicating how severe their symptoms might be and tracking that along the process. So after about 4 months, this was not even through the full entire process together, about halfway through, her symptom scores had overall reduced by 80% in a 4-month period. Not a year, not 2 years, not 5 years, 4 months. Her entire all of her symptoms she had been struggling with before coming to me had gone down by 80%. Huge.
It's incredible, man. And I never, ever get tired of hearing these stories. And that's why I shouldn't say this publicly, but I'm so glad that they pay me to do the FDN Thrive podcast, because I mean, between you and I would do it for free. But again, you know, keep that on the down low. I don't want them getting any ideas. And the reason I love hearing these stories is because, you know, especially as people who have been through it and seen this in family members or whatever, when you tell me something like that, I don't just see someone that, you know, got a little better subjectively, like you said, or maybe their labs look a little better. I mean, they got their life back probably. You know, their relationships get better. You become more confident in yourself. When you have chronic disease, it messes you up. And it messes you up in a lot more ways than just the symptoms normally. It affects you as a person. And the process of overcoming these things and feeling better, it lights people up. And some of the coolest, most passionate people I've ever met, regardless of what their passion is, have been through things like this and overcome it. It's empowering to do it. So that's the coolest gift to be able to give someone else after you've been through that yourself. So my final question for you today, Ryan, is where can people find you if they are looking for like someone who obviously we don't specialize in anything per se, but clearly you work with these types of individuals all the time, and you have a lot of insider knowledge that maybe the average person wouldn't know. So where can they find you?
So I go by The Mindful Nutrivore is the name of my business. So you can find me at themindfulnutrivore.com, and all of my social media handles go by the same name. So on Instagram and on Facebook as well, I'm The Mindful Nutrivore. You could probably also find me by just searching Ryan Monahan, FDN.
Sure. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for being on here again today, and just for everything you do with FDN. Seriously, it's great to be associated with you.
Thank you so much, Evan. I really appreciate it. I'll come back anytime.
He means that too. So careful what you wish for, Ryan. But thank you guys for tuning into another episode of The Real Results Show. We are live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. PST, 3 p.m. EST. As always, I'm your host, Evan Transu, a.k.a. Health Coach Ev, and we've been talking to Ryan Monahan all about Hashimoto's. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Bye, guys.